Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome to IndePractice Presents. Our guest today is Dr. Kishore Tipernini, the founder and primary architect of Tempida. Dr. Tipernini is an orthopedic surgeon in Phoenix, Arizona, who actively practices and actively uses Tempida for the last year and a half. And so, without too much ado, I'm going to give him the screen, allow him to show his screen and talk about what he does here. Let's see here. Dr. Tipernini, the screen is yours as soon as it activates.
Yep. All right, Mark. Thanks for that. Can you see my screen now?
I see your screen. And as always, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Mark Maloney. I'm the CEO of InOps and the initiator of IndePractice. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the introduction, Mark. As Mark has said, I'm a practicing orthopedic surgeon. I'm also a computer programmer and technology developer, and I've been in the space for a while. I created the original PAC software for orthopedics when we went digital many years ago now, but this is the latest product that we've created. The product is called Tempida, which is an acronym for Template-Based Intelligent Documentation Assistant. Basically what it is, it's an AI that significantly speeds up physician documentation and gets rid of all the repetitive stuff in medicine that is really killing productivity right now for all physicians in medicine. And it consists of two different components. The first component, which I call the templating component, is where any kind of clinical documentation gets generated. This component runs entirely in a web browser. There's no software to download, and all the logic and AI is built into the web browsing application. So this is just a standard web browser here, and this is the Tempida homepage. And so typically when you run this, you run your EMR at the same time as Tempida, and you just go ahead and log in here. And once you log in, you'll be presented with what we call the Tempida editor, which is where your notes get generated. So in this example, I'm going to show you a lot of orthopedic stuff. Obviously, Tempida can be used for any clinical practice that requires documentation. So the problem with documentation in the past, even for something common, for example, like carpal tunnel syndrome, is that there's a lot of variability in each patient that has, for example, carpal tunnel, variability like how long they've had symptoms, what treatments they've had, and what my plan is going to be with them. And because of that variability, it's really hard to get static templates that actually work. So you can't have a generic note for carpal tunnel because by the time you change all the things that need to change for each individual patient, it takes forever. So most physicians still end up dictating that note, and that's what consumes so much time. Tempida is designed as an AI to handle the variables and regenerate the note based off of those variables. And I'll show you how that works. So all you have to do to open up a template is just click the open button. There's a ton of publicly available templates already available as soon as somebody signs up. You can use these as is, or you can customize these to your needs. So if I'm looking for example, for a patient with carpal tunnel, I'll just select the initial visit template, and it opens that template in the editor. The way these templates are set up is that all the variables, possible variables for this patient are up here at the top, and at the bottom is where Tempida generates the clinical note for this patient. So for example, in this patient, all I have to do is select some of the options at the top, like what side they're having symptoms on, how long they've had symptoms, some physical exam findings. Let's suppose they brought in some x-rays for me to look at. I'll just select that. As I'm making these selections, Tempida's AI is automatically changing every part of the note that needs to change based off of those selections. So for example, since I selected that they brought in x-rays for me to look at, it automatically put in the x-ray report for me. Right now in the assessment and plan, you can see that under the assessment plan, it says that he's going to undergo surgery for a carpal tunnel release. Well, what if I didn't want to do surgery on this patient? I just want to get an EMG test on them. Under my plan, I'll select EMG, and that part of the note changes to reflect that. So literally, this note that would have taken me a couple of minutes to dictate, I can get done in 10 seconds just by selecting the variables and let Tempida's AI generate the note for me. So now once this note is generated, how does it get into my EMR system? That's where the second component of Tempida takes over. It's called the autopilot, and it works with any existing EMR, and it doesn't need an interface to the EMR. It actually works as a human would and can actually visually see the screen and knows all the button clicks and data entry points to enter data into the system. So I'm going to go ahead and activate that right now. And then everything that you see happening, on the screen is not being done by me, but being done by the AI. So it will actually click on what needs to click. Now it's creating a visit summary for this patient. This particular EMR that you're seeing happens to be Cerner, but this will work with any EMR. So again, I'm not doing anything here. The AI is the one handling the EMR and doing all the button clicks, waiting for the next screen to load and doing the data entry. So it's done with the visit summary. It's going to go to the ambulatory workflow tab and create a new note for this patient. Then it's going to paste the text we created in the template editor and then sign this note. So when this is all happening, I just simply move on to my next patient. I just let the AI handle the EMR for me. So it's done with that. So that particular example in this Cerner EMR was about 15 to 20 clicks that it did for me automatically. So it's a huge time saving. So if you look at this, the amount of time I actually spent documenting this clinical note, it only took me about 15 seconds to sit there and open the template, select the options for this patient, and then let the AI handle all the data and clicking required in the EMR. So because of this, in my practice, I've been using this for over a year. I typically see about 50 patients a day in my practice. If I'm saving 2 minutes per patient, then that's almost 2 hours worth of extra time that I have. So what I've done in my practice is change my schedule so that the patients come in faster, and I can see more patients in the same amount of time because I've got rid of all this busy work that I was doing before. And for me, that's translated the first year that I've used this system to an increase of 30% as far as my RVUs generated in the first year. So this particular system can be used for any type of clinical note. It doesn't have to be just clinic notes. For example, op reports, I suppose I'm doing a total knee replacement. I can select that. And again, it works the same way. Just like the variables at the top, like what size, what side I'm doing, what size components I put in, and et cetera. And then the entire op note gets generated for me. So that, in a nutshell, is what Tempida is. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
So some of the questions that came up actually in the preparation for the webinar were, is cybersecurity or security privacy is a big issue these days.
Yep.
Since Tempida actually interacts with our EMR, is that a concern?
It's really not a concern. Let me tell you why. First of all, there's no HIPAA here, because everything that you're seeing here, as far as the notes and all that kind of stuff, there's no patient information attached to it. So there's no problem with HIPAA compliance. The patient, what happens is the notes get generated in Tempida, then the AI switches over to the EMR and pastes the text that you created in the template into your actual EMR, and that's obviously where the HIPAA is. So that's the number one thing. Number two is everything that you see happening here, other than loading the template initially, is being done locally on that local machine. So there's no connection to the web required after you load the template. Everything is internal, so there's no export of any data outside of the system. So it's really not a security kind of issue or threat.
Okay, that makes sense. What about from an IT perspective? You know, at our practice, IT kind of responds just like attorneys do. They their go-to answer is no.
Yeah. So again, the templating component of this runs entirely in a web browser. So there's absolutely no software to install required for that. The autopilot is an application. It's a Windows application that you have to install once, and it can be installed right here from the web browser. You just select download the autopilot app, and that will install onto the local machine. Now, once it's installed on that machine, it auto updates in case if there's any updates, so we don't have to worry about reinstalling or anything like that. But yeah, that does require you know, IT permission to install the autopilot application.
Okay, that makes sense. What about from the electronic medical record perspective? Do we need to contact them and let them know what we're doing, or is it just something that exists kind of outside their universe?
Yeah, yep, don't have to contact them at all because there's no actual interface to the EMR. I like to think that the autopilot is like a virtual scribe. We basically train it on your existing EMR to visually be able to recognize where all the buttons are and what the workflow is. And then we program the autopilot to sit there and say, okay, when I hit the F1 key, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go here, click this button, wait for this screen to load, click into this box, enter this data, then click here, and all those clicks we just program into the autopilot. And again, it actually can visually see the screen, and there's no actual interface to the EMR.
Well, you kind of anticipated the next question. That is, some of our doctors use scribes.
Yep.
Probably average cost, maybe between $40,000 and $50,000 a year.
Yep.
And can Tempida take the place of a scribe or complement the scribe, or even be used by the physician assistant or the nurse practitioner?
Yeah, so Tempida is basically meant to replace a scribe. And so, yeah, it absolutely can do that. Yeah, it can be used by a PA. In fact, my medical assistant uses Tempida. And let me tell you how that works. Whenever I do an injection in the office, our practice requires that she enters into that patient's chart the lot number, the expiration date, et cetera, of the medication that I injected. Now, typically, I inject a mixture of 3 different medications for a cortisone injection. And so for every time I do an injection, she has to enter like 20 pieces of information into that patient's chart about every single one of those medications. So that was very time consuming for her. And it's not like these lot numbers change or these expiration date changes. So I created a template for her that is a script that basically does all that data entry for her. And a job that used to take her an hour at the end of the day now takes her 5 minutes.
So you just kind of given me an idea. In our surgery center, there's a lot of extra work that's done manually whenever implants are used
Yep.
or anything relative to outside procedures.
Yep.
Could either be tailored to handle all that automatically?
Yeah. The whole point of Tempida is to get rid of the repetitive stuff that we have to do in manual data entry and let the AI handle all that stuff.
Very good. And can Tempida replace some of the transcription or dictation costs that currently incurred?
Absolutely. So, for example, in that carpal tunnel note I showed for you, I mean, normally if you have voice recognition, you have to pay for that, or if you have transcription, you have to pay for that. Obviously, you don't have to do that anymore with Tempida. Now, I will say that I don't think that you're going to get rid of dictation completely. What I created Tempida to do is get rid of the repetitive, simple stuff that takes up so much time. So in my practice, I use, as far as templating, I would say 80% of my patients, I use the Tempida application to create the note. And 60% of those patients, I just create it straight through Tempida and just let it handle it. Another 20%, I let Tempida create the note, but there may be 1 or 2 sentences I want to add that's specific for this patient. And so once the note gets pasted into the EMR, we can have the autopilot pause to allow me to add something just specific, 1 or 2 sentences to that note before I sign it. And but still 20% of patients that are really complex that don't fit a template that I still dictate the notes on. But having Tempida allows me to decide on a per patient basis what is more efficient for me.
Okay. I'm getting a couple of questions outside the chat, actually through my messages, and one of them is, what is required to train or set up the Tempida autopilot, and how long does that take?
That's probably about a 1-hour process. And what's required is just we come into your office, see what your current workflow is, and then basically train the autopilot to emulate that workflow. And I would say that's depending on the size of the workflow and number of clicks. I'd say that's around a 1-hour process. Once we do that workflow, it gets. And by the way, you can have multiple workflows at once. So maybe you have a workflow to do the note, maybe another workflow to do something else. It doesn't matter. You can have an unlimited number of workflows. Once we create those workflows, they actually get stored in the cloud. And so let's suppose like we created a workflow for you on one computer and it's working fine. And then now you're working at a different computer at a different office or something. As soon as you log into the autopilot automatically downloads those workflows for you onto that local computer. So you don't have to do it on each individual computer. In fact, the workflows can be shared between users. So once we create a workflow, suppose you have 5 physicians in your practice, they can all start using it immediately. And that's, like I said, it's about a 1-hour process to do that.
Super. So there's a couple of other questions that are in the questions section. One is, what are the implications for using Tempida in a locally hosted electronic health record versus an Azure hosted, for example? I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Yeah, I understand the question. And the answer to that is it doesn't matter. Tempida doesn't care where the EMR is hosted. Because it works like a human scribe and actually can look and see the visual interface to your EMR, it doesn't even know or care where the EMR is hosted. So it will actually just visually see your EMR screen, click whatever buttons or do whatever data entry is necessary, because we'll train the autopilot to do that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. In reality, Tempida or the EMR doesn't really know where it is.
Right.
It can be anywhere.
Yep.
So what orthopedic EMRs or EHRs is this running on today?
So let's see, we have Cerner, Epic, Athena, and I think that we're about to install Modernizing Medicine. So,
Really?
like I said, it doesn't matter what the EMR is because there's no actual interface. We just look at what your existing EMR is and just train the AI to say, okay, this is how you need to work in this particular EMR.
Okay, very good. I think that's all the questions we have, and this has been recorded today, so everybody that registered will get a copy of today's recording that they can share with their associates or colleagues. Any closing comments, Dr. Tipernini?
The only thing that nobody's asked, and I'm sure it's on their minds, is how much does it cost? Our pricing is very simple. We charge $400 per provider per month. So anybody, any physician that's using it, just $400 a month. Which is
Great.
much less than a scribe.
Much less than a scribe. What about a pilot program? Can a practice initiate a pilot program to see if it might work on a small scale before they kind of go full enterprise?
Yeah, so I absolutely believe in this product, and I believe that once you get on it and see the efficiency gain, that you're going to really love it. So yeah, we do have a pilot program where if you want to trial it with a few physicians before making a big commitment, we'd be absolutely open to that.
Great. Well, thanks very much for sharing time with us today. Wish everybody a good day and a good weekend. And look out for the future for other webinars by IndePractice that will help increase your efficiency, create revenue, create savings, and protect your practice. Have a good day.